What up, y'all? It's TTar, and today we're gonna be talking about a crazy idea. Something along the lines of an Ultra Beast King appearing in Pokemon Legends ZA, and it will make sense by the end of this video. So, a few days ago, we talked about the idea of Ultra Beasts being in Pokemon Legends ZA, which is an absurd thought at first, right? Ultra Beast is the Gen 7 group of Pokemon. Why would they appear in this Gen 6 seasoned game? But I think there's a real fun opportunity here, and the main point I made is the idea that if Ultra Beasts invaded Kalos around 200 years ago when this game takes place, then it makes sense why in the modern day Zygarde is scoping out the scene in Alola when Ultra Beasts have returned to Earth. Zygarde just watching because it knows the Ultra Beast. And I'm going to continue to build on this idea because I had a big revelation of how things could go, but I wanted to make a proper video to focus on it. So let's go point by point. First off, the idea I want to explain this as is something like, since the game takes place in Lumiose, it's Ultra Beasts invading specifically Lumiose, and that's where the big action is. So technically the reason the game takes place only in Lumiose is because the rest of the Kalos region is irrelevant. That's where all the action happened during this time period. And Lumiose is also a hub spot. It's where a lot of people are, so it's the most threatening place to have these invasive species. So that's point one. Point two is, remember when I showed you guys on the site how they wanted to make Lumiose a place that belonged to both people and Pokemon? I've always thought about this line more and more. I'll show it to you. An urban redevelopment plan is underway to shape Lumiose City into a place that belongs to both people and Pokemon. So when I originally talked about this, I grouped the Ultra Beasts in with the Pokemon to say how there's two off sides and they can't find a way to coexist. But as I've thought about it, I've thought of an even cooler way to look at this, which is that there aren't two parties. Right now in this Lumiose city 200 years ago, there are three parties. There's people, there's Pokemon, and the Ultra Beasts would be a third party, and the ultimate enemy of both the people and the Pokemon. So the ultimate purpose of the story is something like Lumiose was generally a stable city. But then, maybe like a few years before the start of the game, Ultra Beasts invaded Lumiose, and this is what led to it falling into more ruin where it needed to be renovated. And so Ultra Beasts have already messed up Lumiose, and so there are three parties in this game: people, Pokemon, and Ultra Beasts. And what this Napoleon figure wants to do is, one, wipe out the Ultra Beasts, get them away because they're invasive species, we don't know where they came from, and then two, redevelop Lumiose, build it stronger than ever. So take away Ultra Beasts, make it a place that belongs to both people and Pokemon. Isn't that a much cooler idea? And it's always fun to, in a smaller scale, crossover regions in the lore like this, because Ultra Beasts, they already are crossed over with Zygarde. Whether this was intentional or not by Gamefreak, Zygarde was in Alola watching them. I think at that moment it wasn't intentional by Gamefreak. They just wanted to relay their scrapped ideas for Zygarde, put it somewhere, and so they just stuffed it in the next game. But now that it's built this game where both Ultra Beasts and a curious Zygarde exist in the same game, it's such a cool notion. So this brings me to my second idea, which I talked about, 200 years ago, Ultra Megalopolis still exists, so you could have members of the Ultra Recon Squad popping up and giving you insight on the Ultra Beasts. Not all the Ultra Beasts, they would just name like a couple of dangerous Ultra Beasts to look out for, and this game would introduce like 4 new Ultra Beasts. So you'd see Nihilegos, Pheromosas, Buzzwoles all around Lumiose, and like a Guzzlord or two. Not in frequent quantity, they would just be like legendaries that have taken over parts of Lumiose. Isn't that crazy? The noble Pokemon is what I'm referencing. They would be the noble Pokemon equivalent. Doesn't that make perfect sense? Isn't that the ultimate opportunity for Gamefreak? Gamefreak needs a reason to make the equivalent of noble Pokemon. They can't reuse the same storyline, so why not make Ultra Beasts that have this red aura that have just taken over areas, and you're liberating it, taking Lumiose back from the Ultra Beasts to make it a place for people in Pokemon. So the Ultra Recon Squad would warn you of stuff like this, and this is when we get brought to our third point. This is what I've been thinking so much about, and man, would this be so cool if it happens. The Ultra Beast King. Okay, so all this talk about Ultra Beast leads to one elephant in the room. Put the logo on screen. Pokemon Legends ZA. So we've looked at this logo and we've talked about it being Zygarde and the A legendary. That was my first guess. Then later on, the idea came out of thinking of it as Zygarde and the Delta, Mega Rayquaza. Here's a third idea. Zygarde and the Ultra Beast King. An Ultra Beast that is the A legendary. The alpha of the Ultra Beast, the king of them. And so this game would introduce an extreme threat, something far beyond the level of the Ultra Beast. A Pokemon with like 680 BST, like an actual legendary tier Ultra Beast. And it would be this ultimate threatening Pokemon. And one of the biggest things the Ultra Recon Squad is doing when they come to you in these games is they're warning you of this Pokemon being somewhere. They sense it in your world and they're telling you desperately you need to rid the world. You need to rid Lumiose of all these Ultra Beasts, take the land back from them, and find this dangerous Ultra Beast lurking somewhere. It can end Lumiose in an instant. That's the Ultra Beast King. That is what they will later dub the A in Pokemon Legends ZA. I'm gonna keep building on this. So, how can you make an Ultra Beast this threatening? I'm gonna give you the ultimate way. You know, Pheromosa is this slim Pokemon that's fast. Nihilego's this parasitic Pokemon. Buzzwole is a buff Pokemon. Ultra Beasts all have characteristics to them. Very simple ones. This Ultra Beast King is gonna have an ability, a special ability that puts it atop as the alpha. And this ability is gonna be something in the nature of these weird, monstrous Ultra Beasts. An ability I'm gonna call absorption. It's an ability it has to just consume more and more, which is something you see with Guzzlord, right? Guzzlord doesn't absorb though. It just can infinitely eat. I don't even think Guzzlord is a bad Pokemon. It just looks very evil. This would be an actual bad Pokemon that the way it got so strong is it has this inherent ability to absorb and get stronger. So that's why it's the alpha, the king of the Ultra Beasts. And like Solgaleo, Lunala, and Necrozma, this Pokemon would be able to summon those Ultra Whirlpools. And this is the story to how, a couple years before the events of the game, they caused the story to take place. They're the ones who started the invasion, somehow fell down to Lumiose, and then summoned a bunch of Ultra Beasts to invade the region. And so why I'm putting forward this idea of absorption is because I'm trying to create a crazy climax for this game. The Origin Dialga and Palkia equivalent, this is what it's gonna be. Also, I forgot to mention this. I chose this word because it starts with A, and in Japanese, they would just dub the name as it is. Absorption, even in Japanese. It's gonna be a group of people who are secondary. You know, you got the main people trying to liberate the region. That's gonna be us. There's gonna be a secondary group of people, worshippers of like Xerneas and Yveltal and all, who think we need to go and find them to save the region. And what's gonna happen at the climax of the game is they're gonna bring either Xerneas or Yveltal to the battlefront to stop this legendary, this A beast. And it's gonna absorb Xerneas or Yveltal. It's gonna absorb and gain the power of life in one pathway of the story or death in one pathway of the story. And this is when it's at its apex. This is when you can give it more meaning to being on the title. And I'm gonna explain that title and logo. You see, Zygarde, what does it exist for? It's the serpent Pokemon that's monitoring the ecosystem. They made this Optimus Prime form, this godlike form where it will eliminate a threat, but it has no use for this form. This form has to have some use. At some point, there must have been a threat so dangerous that Zygarde had to go into this form and struggle to take out the threat. An old nemesis of Zygarde. This would give Zygarde that purpose. At 708 BST, perfect Zygarde would come out in this game and need your help to quell the A legendary, the king of the Ultra Beasts, the alpha of them. And the alpha, it would be stronger than Zygarde because it has just absorbed Xerneas or Yveltal. And this is what the logo is really about. Zygarde and its true nemesis, the A Ultra Beast. And its codename in the game would even be at the, after you beat it and you're talking to the Ultra Recon Squad, they'll call it something like UB-A. That's just their codename. They think it's like the originator of all the Ultra Beasts. They'll make some weird lore up, but they'll give it a code name where it references the A, and its appearance will look like an A as well, to counterpart Zygarde's appearance. Isn't this the ultimate way to do things? That's like the coolest way to make the A legendary. The most threatening invasive species. Like the letter A, it was trying to bring a new start to Lumiose, take it over with its Ultra Beast goons, and like Zygarde's Z, it ended that. It would have 680 BST-ish, this A Ultra Beast, and when it absorbs Xerneas Revoltal, it becomes an Eternatus level threat. That's how crazy the situation has to be to warrant Zygarde's form finally coming out and struggling against it. One thing worth noting, because I was looking for holes in my idea, is that Buzzwole's Ultra Beast name is Absorption, though it's called Expansion in the actual Japanese, and it's because Buzzwole, it sucks Pokemon with that little mosquito crap on its mouth. But really, all the Ultra Beasts have crossing over abilities, right? Remember I said Guzzlord eats a lot. Nihilego, if you think about it, also sucks and feeds on a human to achieve that symbiosis, right? So this concept of absorption actually exists across many Ultra Beasts. Xurkitree too. It stabs itself into the earth and actually absorbs electricity from the earth. Celesteela, it actually sits in the ground like a plant and absorbs sustenance from the earth as well. So I just wanted to take this to the next level with the king of them and show them doing this on a much higher scale, towards absorbing whole creatures, not just absorbing and gaining a little energy off them. I would even want to say a fun idea where by absorbing Xerneas Revoltal, it triggers like its own Mega Evolution, two separate ones through the absorption of Xerneas or Revoltal. And so it would reach 780 BST, just because Pokemon wants to make these Pokemon more usable nowadays. They'll never do the Eternatus thing again, it seems, if they didn't do it with Terrapagus. So it'd be a cool way to cross over an Ultra Beast with the Mega Evolution gimmick. And this creates such a cool idea for the game. You think about what Gamefreak is cooking up in the studios. What are they telling us to wait 2 years for? What are they rubbing their hands excited to show us? This isn't even the biggest crossover to where it's something beyond what Gamefreak would do. Ultra Beast and Zygarde already are crossed over. This is the kind of game that would freaking make people take Pokemon seriously. You know, halfway through you quelling the noble Pokemon, when you talk to the Ultra Recon Squad, they'll tell you what they call it. And just like they call Necrozma the blinding one, they'll call this something that references the letter A. Either they've given it a name that starts with A, or they've given it a title, which, like blinding one, it starts with A. It's crazy. I really want Gamefreak to do this. That's my theory for this game. Shank that like button, let me know your thoughts. Would you want this to happen, or do you think Gamefreak's cooking something else up? I'll see you on the next one. Take care.